Hello, my name's Arian, and I like film. I like film so much that I have been subjecting my people to unofficial movie reviews for quite some time now, and I figured I might as well start putting that on the internet. So without any further ado, let's talk about Superman. Just a heads up, this is going to be a mildly spoilery review, so if you haven't seen the film and you want to go in without knowing anything about it, maybe go watch that and then come back. I wasn't sure if I was excited about this film before I went to watch it, which is kind of weird because I like superhero films, I like comics, but I wasn't sure about some of the casting choices. But I do generally respect James Gunn's previous work, and so I figured it'd probably be a fun film no matter what happened. After watching it, it was okay. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, although I can already see how some of y'all might think I did after this. I also didn't mind the whole thing about Superman's parents wanting him to, take over the world and get himself a harem and roll with an iron fist and keep Krypton alive through, whatever. I didn't mind that because it didn't strike me as so far-fetched based on some of the things I have seen from the comics. I can't say I have ever seen a comic in which, Jor-El and Laura are asking Superman to take over the world. Not sure if that's ever happened, but it just wasn't so far out of the realm of some of the other things I've seen that it was a betrayal the way that it seemed to be for some of the other people that watched this movie. Here's the thing though. I remember thinking that although the film seemed to have everything it needed, it felt like something was missing from it. And I'm not sure if it's this, but this film makes a point of trying to address Superman's humanity to the point that we get a speechy speech about it toward the end. But it doesn't really spend a whole lot of time showing us his humanity. And I think the reason it feels that way is because it doesn't really spend a whole lot of time with Clark Kent. We get to see a lot of Superman's relationship with animals, and we see his relationship with the robots that take care of the fortress. We see a little bit of his relationship to Krypton, like how he relates to the concept of Krypton. We even see a bit of his relationship to humanity in general as that of kind of this lovable, superpowered savior. But we don't really get to see a whole lot of how Clark Kent interacts with and relates to humanity, or how humanity relates to and interacts with Clark Kent when they think he's just another human. And before somebody starts talking about Superman saving the squirrel, or putting himself on the line for crypto, or, not wanting to kill the kaiju, or even saving Metamorpho's baby, those are not indications of humanity. That tells us that this specific alien values life in general. And yes, I do get that probably comes from being raised by the Kents, who are humans, because it definitely didn't come from Jor-El and Laura. But we don't spend a whole lot of time with them either. This movie tries every way it can think of to show us Superman's humanity besides showing him on screen as human, as Clark Kent, interacting with other humans. I do think that with Superman media, and also with people who say that they like Superman, whether or not that's true, it's kind of easy for them sometimes to fall into this trap of being really hung up on the idea of him as kind of, this metaphor, like this savior of humanity, this symbol of hope, But like they kind of treat Clark Kent as an afterthought. I don't think that this film escaped that. You know what this reminds me of? This is a side note, but okay, I've heard like people say stuff like, everybody wants Superman, but they ignore Clark Kent when he's right there with them. Like even ignoring some of the obvious problems with that. These people who are saying that, they don't like Clark Kent. Like, these aren't the same people who will gush about how strong Superman is and how he's a symbol of hope and all of these alien qualities and how hard it is to fight him and, whatever else. But if they never had to see or deal with Clark Kent again, they'd be okay. Like, they're okay with Superman having kind of like this conceptual connection to humanity as Clark Kent, but they don't actually want to see that or be burdened with that. They just want the power fantasy of Superman, which I think is missing a lot of the character and is kind of ironic. I'm sure by now we've all seen or heard the James Gunn quote where it's like, we don't really need to see Kal-El getting rocketed off of Krypton or, pearls scattered in an alleyway or the radioactive spider bite. I tend to agree with him on that one. Superhero franchises are rebooted all the time. People who have never picked up a comic book know these stories already. This is not surprising. Move on. But I think that not starting over, especially since they're starting this film so early in Superman's career, didn't leave very much time for them to establish Clark's on-screen connection to humanity, which I think ends up undercutting one of the points they're trying to make in this film. Because at this point, we're having to kind of rely on our previous understanding of Superman to fill in some of what they're not showing us. Or we have to be somebody that attributes humanity to like his behavior with animals and robots and such. I do wonder if this film was initially a lot longer and they cut out a bunch of Clark Kent scenes because they weren't like relevant to the superhero, supervillain portion of the film. Just as a side note, I did see that people were a little bit iffy about Superman saving the squirrel. I tend to agree with them on that one. Look, I'm glad that you can afford to play with Stitch's ugly kaiju cousin, but the rest of Metropolis might not be able to. Speaking of animals, I might have what could be considered an unpopular opinion. I did not think that the stuff with Krypto was cute at all. Because it reminds me too much of the real world equivalent, where you've got a dog, probably a perfectly good dog, but that's strong and is able to cause a lot of damage, which is not the fault of the dog, but people will be laughing and thinking that their destructive behavior is cute when it's actually dangerous to the people involved and also to the dog. It's like it's all fun and games until the dog, kills somebody's cows or somebody ends up in court or, harms someone or kills somebody or the dog is killed because the owner would not take responsibility for their animal. It was weird to me that the reasons Superman gave for going to save Krypto were, like, not practical ones. He's kind of impractical this entire film, but, like, they were emotional reasons, and they were the only reasons he gave. Like, that Krypto was alone and scared. Okay, but, like, also, it's not good for Lex Luthor or the American government, as it were, to have access to Kryptonian dog DNA that's not even their dog, and it's not even his dog. He needs to go get that dog back. Considering whose dog it is, he really needs to get that dog back. I get that the movie was probably trying to show us that Superman has empathy, but there are plenty of people who love animals and have zero empathy for other human beings. I do think, though, I mean, at least all of this is pretty consistent. Like, it's consistent for the character. Like, this version of Superman is toward the beginning of his career. He's not a big consequences guy. He's just doing stuff and thinking about it later. You know, he's naive to the point of recklessness. Like, he's not taking care of his secret identity at all. It's a miracle his people haven't been messed up already. He gets involved in war and politics, and regardless of whether or not he was right or wrong to get involved, he's like just shocked that like people would have questions for him about that. Like, he actually gets snippy with Lois for asking him questions that any journalist is going to have to ask him, which is odd because he is also a journalist. Like, why are you not expecting these questions? How are you keeping your job? Is it just through fake interviews with Superman? Like, how is this? Why? Where is your journalistic, like, spirit? And neither he nor Lois hide their relationship particularly well, so at some point, you know, somebody in that pool of journalists that they work with is going to recognize that something is off with Lois and Clark, hypnoglasses or not. And I'm not sure when Superman realized that Krypto had some, you know, behavioral issues. I don't know if it was before or after he agreed to watch him. If it was afterward, or I'm sorry, if it was beforehand, that's reckless. Because the film establishes within the first, 5 minutes that Krypto can get out of the fortress whenever he pleases. But I think that undercuts one of the other points that this film tries to make, which is that Superman's tendency to trust everyone and see everyone that he meets as beautiful is the real punk rock. I don't think that there's anything inherently negative about being a trusting person or somebody who sees other people as beautiful. I think it's a shame that the world is not always safe for people like that. But I also think that it is extremely easy to trust everyone you see when no one you see is a threat to you. I think that the point that they're trying to make would be better served coming from a Superman who is maybe a little bit further along in his career and has seen the dangers, like, to himself, who has encountered more of the danger that can come from humanity and is still able to see humanity as beautiful while also looking on everything with maybe a little bit of maturity and more practicality. Anyway, those are my thoughts, and if you have any thoughts about this film, you can go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section below. Otherwise, see you next time.